Welcome back to another lesson about trigonometry. Today we are going to learn how to use trig ratios to find angle measures in right triangles. So in order to find angle measures using trig functions, you need to know what inverse trig functions are. Inverse means you switch the input with the output. What this means is that we are switching the angle measure with the ratio of the sides when we use an inverse function. So inverse trig functions, they help us find angle measures. So when we switch the input and the output, if the sine of A equals x, so remember yesterday we talked about angle A represents an acute angle, and x would be the ratio that comes out of the sine or cosine or tangent function. We are going to switch the angle with the ratio. So when we find an inverse, we switch the measure of the angle with the ratio. So now the input is the ratio, and what comes out of the function is the measure of the angle. Let me show you how this will be used in a practice problem. So it says use a calculator to find the measures of angle A and B to the nearest tenth. So what we will do is we'll first choose whether we want to find angle A or B first. It does not matter which one you start with. I'll begin with angle A. What I do is I want to label my sides. Now think, SOHCAHTOA. Which one uses opposite hypotenuse? That's sine. So I'll write out my trig function normally first. So I'll write sine of A, since I'm trying to find angle A, equals opposite over hypotenuse, so 18 over 27. Once I have this written out, now I can switch it to the inverse function, which is represented by this little negative one. That means inverse. And I can switch the input and the output, so I'll switch the ratio with the angle measure. Now in order to find out what this angle measure is, I need my calculator. Notice my calculator is already set up in degree mode. Yours should be too. And in order to use the inverse, I'm going to have to hit the second button first. So I'll hit second sine to use inverse sine. Notice it comes up on my calculator correctly. And I'll type in the ratio 18 over 27. Notice if this fraction could reduce, you don't need to reduce it. It's just extra unnecessary work. Alright, so we want to round this to the nearest tenth. So we'll have 41.8 is the measure of angle A. Now we could find the measure of angle B using a similar method, a trig function, sine, cosine, or tangent. However, now that I know the measure of angle A, I know that all three angle measures in the right triangle have to add up to 180. This means that the measure of angle B plus 41.8 plus 90 all has to add up to 180. Another way to think about this is that the acute angles in a right triangle always have to add up to 90. So you can double check, do angle A and angle B add up to 90? Yes, they do. Alright, pause the video and try the practice problems given below. Here are the correct answers. For 4A, I chose to use tangent. For B, I used cosine. Now let's talk about solving a right triangle. Solving a right triangle means to find the lengths of all side measures and all angle measures. So whenever you see a problem that asks you to solve the right triangle, it means find all the side lengths and all the angle measures. So this looks like a problem that we did before, so we should be able to find angle X or angle Y. I also have to find the missing side this time. For this problem, it will be easy to find the missing side because I have two sides given. Anytime you have two sides given in a right triangle, we can use Pythagorean theorem to solve for the missing side. So I can leave this as square root of 106, or I could plug it into my calculator and get 10.3. Either answer is appropriate. It doesn't tell us what to round to or to use an exact answer. Now we need to choose, do we want to find angle X first or angle Y first? I think I'm going to choose angle X to find first. So, just like before, I want to label my sides. So I have my opposite, I have my adjacent, and I'm going to use the two sides that they gave me to start, because just in case I messed up something with Pythagorean theorem here, I don't really want to use that just in case I got it wrong. So if I get that wrong, I'll get a further calculation wrong. So let's use a trig function that uses adjacent and opposite. So let's think. SOHCAHTOA. Which one uses adjacent and opposite? Tangent. So I'll write out tangent of x, the ratio, first. So I know tangent of x is going to be the opposite over the adjacent. Now that I have the ratio written, I can switch the ratio with the angle measure by using an inverse. To find this answer, I need to pull out my calculator and type in inverse tangent of 9/5 and see what my calculator tells me. So it's 60.9 is the measure of angle X. And finally, to find the measure of angle Y, I know all three angles must add up to a total of 180 degrees. Or like I told you before, the acute angles always add up to 90 in a right triangle. So I could just take 90 minus the measure of angle X, which we got 60.9, and that gives me 29.1. So there I have all my missing angles and sides. Pause the video and try the practice problem below. Here's the correct answer for the second problem. The first problem I'd like you to do on your own tonight. Finally, I want you to reflect on this. I want you to use 2 to 3 complete sentences in order to explain how can you use the ratios of the side lengths to find the angle measures of the acute angles in a right triangle. So remember, if we're finding angle measures, your answer should have something to do with an inverse trig function. Have a great evening.